We talk a lot about movies and TV shows on this channel, sometimes animated, sometimes not. But one thing I don't think we talk about nearly enough is video games. I'm someone who considers themselves a pretty avid gamer, and while I don't take gaming to the extreme like some people do, it's still something which I actively enjoy, and can even be a comfort and inspiration to me. Ever since I started this channel, I've always wanted to make videos discussing my thoughts on various games that I enjoy, but I've never really found the right opportunity to do so. Until now. Because today, I will be doing just that. We are going to do something very new and different for the channel with this video. No Disney or Pixar this time. No, today we're going to talk about another one of my great loves, Nintendo, and one of their all-time classics, Wii Sports. Wii Sports, released in North America on November 19th, 2006 for the Nintendo Wii, is one of the most recognizable and iconic video games of all time. There's no denying that this game was revolutionary for its time, for it was the title that effectively introduced motion controls to the entire world at large, bringing in both hardcore gamers and ordinary people alike. For those who grew up with the Wii back when the console first came out, Wii Sports is considered to be both a childhood game and a classic, which has given it an almost godlike status within the realm of gaming. As for where I stand on the game though, I absolutely love it. However, my connection to it is a little bit more unorthodox than one might expect. Because I didn't have a gaming console growing up, the only way I really got to experience the game, and its sequel Wii Sports Resort, was through unconventional means. Like on occasions when my old church would have it set up, for example. It wasn't until I finally got my very own Wii when I was around 9 years old that I was able to actively sink my time into it, and actually become skilled at playing it. As such, my opinions on it are a lot more nuanced and developed now than they were as a child. So I think now's as good of time as any to give you all my thoughts on each of the game's modes. I should acknowledge right away that this list will not be covering the training exercises included for each sport, simply because I feel the gameplay in those is different enough from the 5 sports themselves that they each warrant their own ranking. Perhaps someday I'll make an additional part later on covering each of those, but at the moment, I'm not going to promise that. I'll also just state right up front that my analysis of this game will be told mostly from the perspective of someone who typically plays the game by themselves. I'll throw in occasional mentions of how multiplayer affects the experience that each sport provides, but since I typically don't play it that way, I won't be talking about that side of it as much. So, with all that out of the way, we're left with 5 sports in total to cover: boxing, tennis, baseball, bowling, and golf. I will be talking about each one of these games in detail and ranking them all as I go, starting from the worst and working my way up towards the best. So now, let's get started!
Wait a minute! I hate golf!
Golf has always been the one Wii sport I've never been a fan of. It's not bad by any means, but it's definitely not something I find that interesting to play for an extended period of time. I can see why some people might like it, but for me personally, its difficulty and the amount of time it can take to hit just one golf ball into a hole, I find to be its biggest turnoffs. The biggest grievance I have with this game is how finicky the controls are. Oftentimes in practice, I'll swing my Wii remote with the exact amount of force I need to hit my shot just right, but then when I go to do it again, exactly like before, it nearly always applies more force than I had intended to. The putter is the worst example of this by far. You can barely swing the Wii remote at all without it going into the red. I honestly wish there was some way to save your practice swings so you could choose to select them for your actual swing later. It wouldn't be as true to life, sure, but at least it would make the game a heck of a lot easier to play. If the controls were better, I honestly think this game would be much more solid, but as it stands, this is my least favorite sport in Wii Sports. That said, there are still things about this game that I do like. For one thing, I find its scenery to be very beautiful and eye-catching. And aside from being eye candy, the game even manages to make use of it in creative ways. The best example of this can be seen in the level where you have to hit a ball across several islands to get it onto the one where the hole is at. I personally found that very creative. Not to mention, the music is also quite relaxing as well. All the songs have a very chill and breezy vibe to them, which fits the feeling of the sport quite well, I think. That's about all I can muster up in terms of compliments for this game, though. So yeah, only 1 out of 5 sports that I'm not crazy about. I kinda like this game, if you couldn't tell.
Watch out for this guy, Mike. He really crowds the plate.
Don't worry about it. I know this guy. I played Little League with him. He's got strikeout written all over his knees.
Baseball is a game that I have very mixed feelings about. On the one hand, it can be a lot of fun, but on the other hand, it can also be very, very frustrating. This really all comes down to the me you're playing against, whether they're really good or really bad. For example, sometimes a pitcher will throw balls in a curve that you just barely miss, ones that are basically impossible to hit, or some that aren't even in the strike zone at all. On the flip side though, whenever the opposing team is up to bat, it feels like most of the time, none of that applies to them. Not only is it way harder to strike them out, but even if you manage to get them to mess up and not hit the ball very far, you'll be lucky if your team even manages to catch it in time for a strikeout. Seriously, why can't you guys just dive for it more often? And don't even get me started on pop flies. Let me tell you, nothing makes your heart sink faster than seeing a ball you've hit so hard fly in a curving arc and then land squarely into a me's glove. By that point, you're left to do nothing but accept your fate. Even if it's not something I enjoy doing as much as batting, I usually find that I'm a lot better at pitching. But even that can be tricky because of how good the me's are at hitting balls thrown at them. A lot of these things likely have to do with a skill issue on my part, but I also think that much of it has to do with the way the AI in this game are programmed too. In spite of all this though, baseball can still be a lot of fun. It's always extremely gratifying to see your swings land you a single, double, or triple whenever you're up to bat, and few things in this game can match the satisfaction of hitting a home run and seeing your me's all run to home plate. And who could argue against it being a satisfying experience when you crush the opposing team by a wide margin of 21-7 or 30-5? Nobody. All these things make the game worth it to play in spite of how irritating and challenging this sport can be. And I'll still gladly try and press my luck with it whenever I can, even if it's anyone's guess whether I'll win or lose.
I wanted to go bowling!
Bowling is just a good time all around. In this game, it doesn't matter if you're going at your own pace and trying to set new records, or competing against a friend for the top score, since either way, the adrenaline rush you get by knocking down as many pins as you can always manages to keep the game engaging. And if that weren't enough, there's plenty other smaller things about this game that make it fun as well, like the chill music that plays in the background while you're bowling, or the funny detail of how if you accidentally throw your ball backwards, all the me's will spin around in terror. In my opinion though, the best part about this game is that out of the 5 sports included in Wii Sports, this one is by far the most accessible to all. You don't have to be a professional bowler or even particularly good at the sport at all to pick up and play this game. It can help, but it's certainly not a requirement. At the same time, you still have to put effort into figuring out how you want to throw the ball in order to topple enough pins over. But once you figure that out, which doesn't take long to discover, then you should find yourself doing fairly well playing it. All this considered, it really is no surprise that this sport in particular is one of the most popular in the whole collection. Though it may accomplish the same goal as its brethren, in many ways it does so on an even greater level. Its slower pace and user-friendly controls make it the easiest for those who aren't very skilled at video games to have fun and enjoy, while also simultaneously catering to longtime gamers by serving up a sensational experience. And I for one have had, and will continue to have, a blast with this for as long as I play it.
This is gonna be on Tennis TV, bro.
Ah, tennis. My beloved tennis. This game is one that never fails to put a smile on my face whenever I need it, thanks to just how fun it is to play. Whether it's through hitting a ball so hard that the other players miss it, or serving it so fast that they can barely hit it, or seeing your serve cause the ball to go out of court, no matter how you slice it, this game is ounces of fun. It always fills me up with delight to see how my serves are so quick, fast, and precise that only the best me's in the game stand a chance against me. resulting in countless consecutive wins for me. And be honest, we all like to swing the Wii remote around as fast as we can, whether we get the you win or you lose screen, don't we? Yeah, everyone does. That being said, tennis does have its moments that can be annoying. Because of the way the camera is placed, sometimes it's not entirely clear where the ball is relative to your racket, making it so that sometimes your hits don't have the exact impact that you want, which can lead to things like the ball hitting the net or landing out of bounds. Not to mention how frustrating it can be whenever you get locked into a deuce with another opponent. It feels like it can take an eternity to move beyond them sometimes. And even when you do finally manage to break out of it, who's to say whether you'll pull ahead or fall behind? For me, it's usually the latter. Nonetheless, these things do not ruin the game for me, nor do I dock points from it because of them. In the grand scheme of things, all this stuff doesn't really matter, because the sheer joy I get from hitting a tennis ball so hard and angled so far is unmatched by few things in this game. Except, of course, for getting a strike in bowling, or just the game of boxing in general. Which, of course, brings me right to the final sport on this list. Just like how golf has always been my least favorite Wii sport ever since I was a child, boxing has always been my favorite. I mean, do I even really need to explain why this game is so much fun? You stand in a ring and beat on each other until one of you collapses on the floor. What could possibly be more exhilarating than that? Well, perhaps the fact that there's a great deal of variety in it. One thing about this game I really love is how it gets progressively more difficult as it goes along. In the beginning, if you're even halfway competent at the game, you can knock your opponent out easily. But as time wears on, they start becoming more and more difficult, making it so you can't just hit them with a mindless flurry of punches anymore. You have to be quick thinking and on the ball in order to find any openings they leave for attack. But at the same time, you also have to be on guard for them to do the same to you. And if either of you are skilled enough, you'll be able to use the opportunity to unleash a devastating combo that puts your enemy to sleep. The developers could have so easily phoned it in here, and made it so you only had to stand a straight line mindlessly swinging at your opponent. But no, they bothered to put effort into making boxing an actual challenge, where you have to bob, weave, and find openings in your challenger's stance. So when you finally become the boxing champion yourself, it feels that much more rewarding. Even the smaller details of this game add to this factor. In the beginning of the game, it starts out with a very small crowd observing the match in the stands, but as you continue playing and the boxers you face become increasingly more difficult, more and more Miis turn out to watch, truly reflecting the intensity and excitement of the match. And once you've made your way all the way up to Matt himself and take his title as champion, you're rewarded with his silver boxing gloves, which you can put on by holding down the 1 button on your Wii remote when the screen goes to black just before a new match starts, making your accomplishment feel all the more satisfying. All these things put together make boxing overall an incredibly fantastic experience, and one that I am proud to call my most favorite event in Wii Sports. And that's my ranking of every Wii sport. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. This was something very new and different from my norm on the channel, but I felt it was time to start branching out a little bit. Hopefully this will be the beginning of many new Nintendo videos yet to come, and other gaming related videos in general. Feel free to let me know your thoughts on all this, and leave your own rankings down in the comments below. That's all from me, guys. I will see you in the next one. Peace.